Greetings and welcome to the Pure Report. I'm your host, Rob Ludeman, and it is time to bring the orange. Coming up on this episode, we are diving deep into all the different virtualization areas. That is right, two technical experts that I am pleased to bring on to the program. We're actually going to go through something that they covered at Accelerate, but if you are interested in the landscape, or you're interested in VCF and Nutanix, in Azure Local, in Hyper-V, I'm naming off all these things to keep people hooked in. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to talk about the latest and greatest of where we are now with Everpure with those technologies coming onto the program for the first time. Both of you. Alex Carver on my left from the product team, very integral in virtualization side. Matt Webb, more recently to the company, year and a half-ish now?
Year and a half-ish. Last February is when I turned over.
You were one that was broadcast heavily to me, though. Like, it was, you came on and all the, the Tristan Todds and the Dave Stevenses were all like, oh, you got to get.
Oh, man, they're setting the bar too high.
Get with this guy. Carver, how long are you're close to lifer?
11 and a half years now.
I'm very bummed. You rarely bring people on that have been here longer than I have.
Right.
No, but that's great. You've seen a lot. What have you seen throughout that 11 years that kind of blows your mind?
I think the interesting part is how sticky we've been with a lot of different accounts, right?
I love that.
Like, there's so many of these accounts where you get in there with, the FA300s, like way back in the day, or the 405, 420s, our first arrays, and they really were a big hit, especially on, the savings that they would get from it, the simplicity, all the different features, and then it just kept on growing and growing and growing, or they kept on going with it and they just upgrade their arrays. And so there's so many of these different arrays out there and companies that have, this data that's been on there, they've gone through 3, 4, 5 different generations of models and stuff, but they're still like loving it and purchasing more. It's been really cool just to see the growth of some of these companies.
Yeah, the evergreen model, right? Like, they see it in action, they love it, they want more of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's huge.
What was it like with some of those early customers, though, like seeing the light bulb go on? And you may have heard about it. I mean, you were kind of in the VMware space for a while, but like Flash was still a tough sell.
Yeah.
It was more expensive. Yes, we knew it was fast. But then you solved for a lot more things. And to your point, Webb, the evergreen piece where they went, wait, like I can upgrade all these different pieces on the fly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's two things that really come to mind like right away from him. The one is just understanding like our proactive, like reaching out to them about different parts to it. We were very aggressive in reaching out to customers if, their arrays got to a certain full or if there were anything going on there. And then we had a couple customers that were very used to some of their legacy storage vendors that if a drive failed, it was a Sev 1. And if 2 drives failed, it was all hands on deck. And so earlier in the days, there would be some issues with how our flash drives were initially. They would have like little blips that would go on. They would be down and then back up like immediately. Variety of reasons why that was happening. But, as a growing company, you work through some of those things. But so they would get these alerts of drive failures and it would get paging everybody in their company because a drive failure was a serious thing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, that was just transient. We're good now. Or like, we just automatically took care of it for you, or it's not a big deal. And they had to completely change their entire alerting model because a drive failure was not the same impact for them and they did not have to worry about it. They didn't have to have someone on site to hurry up and go find it and replace it with a new one and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember having to settle down the entire group. It's like, no, everything's fine. It's even back online now.
This is how they work. This is how it functions.
Yeah. I think that rolls up to like a broader theme of just that big orange hug of focusing maniacally on customers all the time. Only been here a year and a half, worked at many competitors against Pure, and that was the biggest thing. If I knew Pure was there, they were going to surround the customer. They were going to make sure they're taken care of. They're always focused on. It's a general thing. It's not very technical. Like, those are the nitty-gritty things that allow that to happen, but really it is that maniacal focus.
Yeah. Yeah, the cultural piece. When did you first get wind? I mean, you were at competitors, also just in the VMware space. Like, when did you first start noticing? There's Pure things here.
My days go all the way back to like EqualLogic Sans.
Oh gosh,
Compellent. It was probably 2013, 2014 when I started seeing it in the field when I was working for those companies. And then when I really, respected Pure as a competitor was probably during my vCAN days at VMware. Okay. If I knew they were there, I knew, I had uphill climb.
Yeah.
Like both from the culture perspective and the technology perspective. Like we were doing some really cool things with vSAN, and it was during the hockey stick curve in 2016, 2017 of this HCI. You could say HCI 3 or 4 times, and an order would just magically appear.
For sure.
It was a huge marketing wave. But as that started to wear off, it is about the consistency and and all the performance that Pure gives. With that evergreen model was really huge.
Well, we're fortunate that you ended up here and love all the things that you were doing. I want to dig in because when you guys proposed this, it's nice to be at the crossroads of all the different things that we could do for attendees at Accelerate. And truly, when I start looking at that with the team and we make choices on what sessions to run, it's not about us, right? It's for me, it's always about the attendee experience, right? It's like, what do they want to hear?
Yeah.
What are they going to take away that's going to make them feel like, oh, this was a good event for me to come to. I learned some things. And you guys pitched this, pretty basic title, but a lot of depth with it. And you're like, what's new with Everpure in the virtualization landscape? And I was like, oh, I got to see this. And then, very highly attended session. And so it just made it really easy for me to go like, hey guys, are you in town? Let's dig into this. You had some context setting up front though, right? And I thought it was a really interesting way to set the stage just around monopolization of different technologies and looking at the different legs of the stool, of the compute and the networking and storage. How did you go about articulating that to the audience to frame the conversation?
It's really interesting because like a lot of folks that have been in tech for a while or just been in this industry or dealt with hardware, you walk into a data center and it's not just all the same hardware that's there.
Never
right?
is. Very rare.
It's not all the same networking switches, right?
Yeah.
You see a mixture of a bunch of different ones, right? And it goes data center, customer to customer. There's a variety of, different deployments out there. But when I started getting working in tech in the field and stuff like that, you pretty much had a couple different things, but 80% of it, 90% of it would be all ESXi and VMware in there, right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter what the server hardware was or what the networking was. It was almost always just all VMware, and the only other ones were bare metal Linux or bare metal Windows Server for whatever. Anything virtualized was almost always on VMware, and that's just not the case with how IT share is in general, right?
Yeah, it was a huge anomaly, right?
And even if you try to look at broad, even outside the IT market, it rarely happens. It's this monopolistic, share that VMware has. Maybe Adobe with Photoshop or Windows, on home PCs, but even that's changing because you have Mac OS and then people are starting to install Linux. Like monopoly share, I mean, we live in a capitalistic society. Competition drives this type of behavior.
Sure.
This is finally, them making these pricing changes makes it to where it's going to start looking like the rest of the market in these other spaces. It will be fragmented. And as, we're technical practitioners, we work with a lot of admins and directors. You have to know other products now. Like you can't just be the vSphere admin. You have to know how to work on these other products because you'll see them in more and more installed bases. Just like you go in and you see a Pure and maybe a NetApps right there next to it. Even though we don't want to see that happens. And sometimes that's strategic. I know you've talked about that with Ernesto and some other people. Maybe I keep dev on a different platform and I got prod on VMware because I don't know what the next 3 years is going to bring. I paid this first ELA, but I may not do it again if they up it just like they did the last time, right? So that's
it also shows how there's like a squishy kind of gray area, right? And we're not, even like 80%. It wasn't 100%. That was kind of our stat of the episode, like where you're like 80% is, ESXi and VMware things. There's still this kind of squishiness. And for me, as like old server guy, the reason we were always told, because we would go and just go, oh, you should just, should run Spark Solaris on everything. And dating myself, but, the customer would say, no, we love your stuff. Like it's rock solid, reliable, and fast enough. We just need a second source.
Yeah.
Right. We just need something in case you put us in a tough situation or there's supply chain issues or whatever. Like we need a second source. But VMware was one of those things where it kind of didn't matter because that's what just everybody wanted to run, and it worked and it functioned. It did everything you needed.
Yeah. There wasn't anything comparable either.
That too.
Right?
That too. That's a good point.
This is the biggest thing. There are different spikes, right, of different times that one thing or the other would pop up for a bit, or some people wanted just to try something different. Saw this actually a lot when Kubernetes started taking storm and stuff like that, where they're like, hey, well, let's go ahead and start deploying some of this in some of our containerized workloads, or start figuring out that part. And some new workloads were just deployed on that way versus just any workload got deployed on VMware, because that's where your virtualization environment was. But the thing is, we didn't see for a very long time any innovation coming out from any of the other players in the field.
Probably the biggest competition they faced was, I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was early on in my IT career. Windows Server 2012 R2 was coming out. And Paul Moritz had basically added that this is what became known as the VTax. If you had a host over 512 gigs of RAM, you had to add another socket license to license that host. So similar in the sense of it's more expensive with no added value. It's not like they added anything. And Windows Server 2012 R2 and Hyper-V was coming out. They had I think they went beyond the 2 terabyte VHD. They could do up to 64 terabyte before they finally made that change in 5.5 for VMware. And so it was like almost a foregone conclusion. Microsoft is now focused on this market. I thought they were going to win. I thought they were going to dominate the market, and they never did, just because the product was so solid. And also Pat Gelsinger came in and goes, that extra VRAM entitlement, forget it. We're not doing that anymore. And immediately became the favorite CEO of VMware. But I mean, it was a credit to the product itself, and specifically the hypervisor management platform and vCenter and some of the ancillary things around it.
Yeah, people love using it.
And I think a lot of people just took for granted how well vSphere HA and vSphere DRS and those products had matured. And biggest one, just VMFS, just the cluster file system, is you really don't get a like for like comparison, a lot of those things, or there wasn't a really good comparison out there. And now these other vendors and these other platforms are actually needing to address that. There needs to be that almost feature parity, or do they do something better or different or more unique than how VMware had been doing it for a long time, is where they're trying to position it more so. Now, maybe that's cost, like they do cost better than anything else, right? But they're also trying to look at, well, what are the other ways that it can be unique or differential on how to run on this platform versus how you were always doing it on VMware for the last, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of both, right? I think people want the comfort and the familiarity of what they're used to, but this almost, I'll use reset, that's not the right word, but I'm going to use it anyway. Like this almost reset now presents a scenario where we can reimagine or rethink or redevelop the way things have always been done. Might be something better that comes out in some of these other technologies.
I think in general, though, this is healthier for the ecosystem.
For sure.
Just having one, product out there generally doesn't lead to a glut of innovation, right? People kind of get stagnant or settled for it, or the stuff that changes, changes because someone wanted to do something different there, or they got a very big request from a big customer about changing something, and so they go through it.
It'll always move the needle.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Versus, I mean, when Everpure, started doing the all-flash arrays, it really forced a lot of change in the market in general, away from just doing legacy spinning disk all
turning
the
the
time.
crank and doing the same old, right? Again, that kind of same old thing.
It did force innovation across the board, and other companies and competitors. Now, some of them just acquired other startups to do it, right?
Yeah.
But it still changed how the storage ecosystem was, because there was a big innovator in that market. And that's what you generally want to see. It's good to have competition. Competition is generally healthy.
It's great for users. It's great for customers, right? They're the ones that benefit from innovation, from efficiency, from reduced cost over time, all those kinds of things. Weber, this was your first Accelerate.
Yeah.
And relative to some of the things we're going to talk about, what was the general theme as you're talking with folks, particularly those that are invested in the virtualization ecosystem? What'd you come away with as to where their minds are? What are they thinking?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is we're still in the middle of this, right?
Okay.
Like even though this happened in...
Still transitioning.
Yeah, like 2023, I think is fall 2023 is when the acquisition went down. I think that's right. You think that this is already passed, and we're still in the thick of it. We're still right in the middle, and that goes to all the ecosystem partners we're going to talk about today. like it is changing so fast, and like it doesn't like just a month from now or 2 months from now, these products are going to have even more, get closer to parity, have more features to kind of match that vCenter like experience, and customers are still taking a very like some are going all in on another platform, some are doing kind of in between, and some are just renewing and waiting for the next 3 or 5 or 7 years, depending if they do really big contract terms. So I think that's the biggest takeaway from a virtualization standpoint at Accelerate is, we're still in the middle of this, and there's still this fragmentation. We're all kind of waiting for a coalesce to a vendor, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be like we talked about early on, where there's many different vendors, and a lot of these companies are going to choose what feels right for them from maybe a vendor relationship standpoint or a skill set standpoint. And that's just going to continue to support that fragmentation in the market, which is, more competition, which I think is healthier.
For sure.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It does add a lot to an admin, because the reason why at Accelerate in any event, why virtualization is so big, is it is the glue of where software meets hardware, and all these things. It's so hard to describe the spaghetti mess of IT, how all it intertwines on the hypervisor layer, like RBAC controls, backup, logging, governance, like all that stuff coalesces into the hypervisor. So, that just showed to Accelerate, and why it was one of the top sessions, in my opinion. Well,
what also showed Accelerate was that a high number of attendees are still really interested in the VMware ecosystem. And so what I appreciate is that our message has been crystal clear since whenever 2023, is that we're not changing anything about the intimacy of that relationship and the engineering relationships and the PMs that I'm sure you talk to on a weekly, if not daily basis. And we had a ton of people in the VCF session as well at Accelerate, which was really cool. So I'm kind of starting with, the partner status is strong. Like that isn't changing. More integration going on, understanding what that roadmap looks like. What's got you excited about where you're seeing things go there?
Yeah, I think it's also like change, right? Obviously, there was a lot of investment from Everpure
for a
and
long time,
VMware,
too.
Specifically in vSphere virtual volumes. I mean, that's what I spent how many years entirely focused on that and becoming like the subject matter expert, like me and Cody Hosterman were just out
Mr.
there
V-Vols.
just doing it, right? Yeah, it
Mr.
was,
and Mr. V-Vols.
It was really a big focus.
Well, there was a lot of adoption. You guys were successful.
There's a lot of value.
And we did build in a lot of that with our integrations. That's what we were keying off on, a lot of really cool features with it. And as a part of that, there were a lot of folks over at VMware we were working with all the time, engineering. And so it's not necessarily we've kept that up as far as like everybody over there still working. It's just we're working on different things now, right? Yeah. And so a lot of the focus actually turned into, well, we're not doing all these things with vVols anymore. Let's go ahead and like really focus in on NVMe over Fabrics and really hone in on here and see what we can do differently here or we can enhance. So, that may have been adding like the NVMe TCP support and then completely removing some of the SCSI translation stuff. They did that in vSphere 8, even before the acquisition. So that was something that happened. Anyways, but now, all right, so what are some other things? VMFS is pretty solid. It's kind of done. Like there's not too much that's going to change there, but NFS was still growing. There's still unique things that you can do. They didn't really enhance the 4.1, integrations or anything like that, but there's more that could be done with NFS 3. And so they added a lot of new features into 8. And then we were design partners with them on stuff like in-guest unmap for NFS and NFS unmap and enhancing those parts. And then also we were the design partners for stretch storage support for NVMe over Fabrics. Only one, last time I checked, that partnered with them on VCF 9.1 for active cluster support with NVMe over Fabrics. And that's a very unique offering. And a lot of co-engineering went into that with both sides of it. And we've got several other NVMe projects that are going on right now with them too, that enhancing that kind of services. So there's still a lot of communication. Still send them out arrays that they're testing and developing on and doing a lot of that stuff. So the relationship's still really strong. It's shifted more about how do we integrate between like Purity and our Purity APIs with vVols and all those different parts to it. And it's more like, all right, how do we make, the VCF experience, the VMware Cloud Foundation experience really successful for customers as, vSphere 8's going end of support October of next year. And so now customers are kind of having to make the choice of like, well, now we need to get to 9. Are we going to go the full VCF deployment route with everything? Are we going to try to operate it a little bit differently? And so it's well, let's get you the most value out of this.
Yeah.
You're paying more money. Let's get you more value out of it, whether that's the different integrations that are there, whether that's with operations or orchestrator and automation, or anything that comes in the future. There could be other things that we actually hear from customers like, no, we need to integrate at this point. And we want to make sure that it's still, you're getting the most out of your Everpure platform while using VCF. And it's not just necessarily about booting VMs either. I think that's the other thing that's kind of shifted the conversation in the last 5-6 years, that it's not just about booting your VMs on storage. There's a lot of other ways that you're able to leverage Everpure, right? Whether that's with the FlashBlade and really fast object or the file share there, or doing flash array file services, and you have NFS and SMB on there for your user shares for VDI. Maybe your VDI is running on HCI for a variety of reasons. You might have that set up that you're booting your VMs on vSAN, but you still want to be able to leverage your FlashBlade, or you have flash array file set up somewhere, so you get your user share set up on there. Or make sure that you're offloading some of your backup and storing it there for object or your AI workload. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we're focusing on how to integrate and get the most value out of your VCF deployments now, along with your Everpure platform, so that you can get the value, because your licensing costs aren't likely going down with VMware anytime soon. And so it's really more about getting the most value you can out of what you're paying for.
Yeah, we kind of hit that with Ernie a couple weeks ago as well too. Is just take advantage of those things. Webb, how are you? You're in that field-facing role, right? And so you're engaging a lot of these firsthand conversations, and you have the word architect in your title, which is cool. Like, talk about when you're going into these environments where our customers are facing some of these transitions, end of life, moving, shifting. Like, what are some things that you're contending with or advising customers right now in that space?
Yeah, even at a tactical level, this is something we hit on at Accelerate, was just the adoption of vSphere in general has changed. We've been doing 20 years of, you upgrade your vCenter version, then you go to your ESXi version. Now you're going to have a VCF ops instance in a VCF 9 environment. That is where you interact with licensing, and it has this converged import and greenfield installer workflow. And so we've been working really hard on documentation to help customers understand, and this is a big question from customers, and it is a source of confusion of what storage is supported based on what workflow. So this isn't really an update thing, this is an adoption thing. Right. So the customers have chosen to stay on VMware. It's walking them through, really, calming their nerves that as long as we're on the HCL and our products are, then it's supported in VCF 9. It's just how you get there. And oftentimes it's referring to this VMware KB that we've been sharing often about the converged workflow, where maybe you're a nice SCSI shop. When you do the VCF installer on Greenfield, there's only 2 options when it comes to external storage. There's NFS v3 and VMFS over Fiber Channel, and that causes all sorts of confusion because it's just a workflow thing. So you do, a converged workflow, you can go ahead and consume an existing vCenter 9 environment that has iSCSI storage. That's probably one of the dominant topics when it comes to how do I get to VCF? And then it gets into the enterprise data cloud and fusion around exactly what Alex was mentioning of, I may be looking at using VKS or VMware Kubernetes service, and those new services are going to consume object. How can I do that on an Everpure platform? What's the best way to consume those services? So it is, first, we're still in the midst of this, right in the middle. It's the tactical things of how do I get to VCF 9? And then it opens into the broader conversation of architecture. What tools from the VCF suite am I going to leverage, and how can that go into the enterprise data cloud and leverage my Everpure products?
Love that. Those sound like very, very productive discussions. And before we move on to the next one, just a couple of CTAs that I'll throw out for folks. You mentioned the KB, right? You're getting a lot of uptake on that, which is great, because people love to self-service for a little bit before they then bring in smart guys like you for those more complicated discussions. The other is, if the schedule holds, we will be publishing this just a week or so in advance of VMware Explore. I keep wanting to call it VMworld. Don't we all?
I still call it very
It's really difficult, but I got it out twice in 2 episodes ago, and I'm going to get out this time. And so, folks that are going there, please come. Individuals like you guys will be there to engage. We've got a lot of great booth presentations, and I'm saying it now because we're going to go on to a whole bunch of other virtualization-y things that we are there to talk about VMware ecosystem.
Yep. And Matt and I are actually doing a presentation. It's the VMware Cloud Foundation anywhere with Everpure, right?
Anywhere.
Because
Love it.
there's a lot of different options, right? You can be running Azure and AVS, so Azure VMware Solution, which is just a managed VCF deployment.
Yeah,
there.
that was the product I was working on before I came over. So definitely the hybrid cloud model. What does that mean for Everpure? Because we've been working on things like Everpure Cloud, which many of our customers know about, to leverage either EVS or AVS, because those ecosystems have changed, right? It's worth doing a session on.
Yeah, with EVS, it's a little unlocked, and that's on AWS. It's the Elastic VMware services. But there's other options for those ones, right? So maybe you do have a hybrid cloud solution. Maybe you only have like a on-prem solution. There's a variety of ways that customers deploy it, and the whole point of this session is here's how we can make it better as a company for you.
And we have a tight timeline for that deck, too, that we
Anywhere.
get submitted.
Yes. There's always a tight timeline for those
timeline.
events. You
And
got
then,
somebody driving you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have a short theater session, too, that we're doing for Active Cluster and NVMe over
Oh, is that one that you're
Fabrics.
doing as part of the program, the Anywhere one? That actually got into the catalog, yeah?
So the
Because I know we have the mini
VCF
theater,
Anywhere.
but then, okay, that's awesome.
Well,
okay.
then, we'll have a little theater breakout that's a little 25-minute. That's just a deep dive into Active Cluster, NVMe over Fabrics. But I'll probably shoehorn Active Cluster file in there,
sprinkle a little bit of that in there. Yeah, it's sprinkleable. That's worth it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll close the book on the VMware piece right now, but well done. Great technical depth, just letting people know where we're going with that and where we are now. And also that you and others are resources for them to call upon. I want to, you mentioned the Azure thing, not quite what we're going to dive into, but we've had some news recently on Azure Local. We also had a little small session at Accelerate on that. And I think we're going to kind of bolt on a little bit of Hyper-V on this as well, just for certain reasons. But talk about how that all came about and where we are architecturally with what's going on in that space.
Yeah, it was really interesting working with Microsoft the last several years. Obviously, I don't have the level of depth and interaction with Microsoft that someone like Rob Quimby has,
Of course,
right?
yeah, of course.
But we have worked with them quite a bit. It's just some of the stuff where they were pushing with Azure Stack, right, where it was a very HCI situation, where they had a very strict compatibility, HCL, all these different parts to it that just didn't quite adopt the way it was. And even initially when Azure Local was released, it was still storage spaces direct only. It was still essentially an HCI solution. External storage wasn't really there. And so we spent a lot of time with them going back and forth and being like, if you actually want people to adopt this and move over to it, you need to support external storage.
Yeah.
Whether that's in a combined of your HCI plus, right, or a completely disaggregated where it is just external storage only. And we were able to get that, right? So you can do Azure Local with Fiber Channel and iSCSI now too. iSCSI is GA.
Okay.
So both for Fiber Channel and iSCSI, you can do external storage only for Azure Local. And there's different integration points that will work with them, but it does give that familiar operating model. So most customers that are really interested in it are the ones that have a hybrid situation where they do have a fair amount of workloads running in Azure, or they do have a fair amount of Azure spend. And so they're able to do a little bit more, if they have on-prem that's never going to move up there, that they can still have that same operating model. They don't have to retrain.
Kind of standardize that control plane with the Azure interface,
And-
right? That's kind of their idea behind it.
And it is fairly nice for the most part. Like if you're used to just the old, Hyper-V manager and, System Center, Virtual Machine Manager, any of these older stuff that people have been managing their Hyper-V, environments.
Maybe
even
you've
at
got
scale.
extensive intra-ID, governance controls. Like there's a lot of benefits to that for certain customers. I think that certain customers are looking for that flavor of, local governance, but with an Azure interface. It is kind of the simplistic way to put it.
Yeah, and I know you can definitely expand up a lot higher with Azure Local with external storage only,
Right.
whereas with the HCI nodes, you are you're limited to a maximum size you can do.
Scaling is tough.
So,
Was it like 16 nodes for like an HCI combination, then up to 64 nodes on external storage. So, that matches with the scaling of what external storage and Everpure can do, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also working with them to integrate it with their other Azure services, right? With that, whether that's Azure VDI, right? With the Azure virtual desktops.
AKS is another one, like their Kubernetes service.
So you essentially just point those services to external storage, and then
away you go.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did make it a little bit simpler there. So, there's still some customers that are looking at it, investigating it, and digging into it. But there's a lot of other customers that are just like, hey, we have a big Microsoft spend. We already have a bunch of Windows Server. We're just moving them off of VMs, moving them into bare metals, and we'll just set up Hyper-V on
just
here.
rolling. Yeah.
And I've seen this a lot in the kind of the SLED portion where they already spend a lot on Microsoft, and rather than looking at Azure Local, they've been just looking at just doing Hyper-V. It's not a super big scale usually with these workloads, right? They're not dealing with 2,000 hosts or 4,000 hosts running Hyper-V. It's usually a little bit more
It's not
smaller
going to be
scale.
something super terribly complicated to learn as well. Usually that's something that they already know how to work with.
And that's some of it's, these other offerings, they kind of miss the boat in the sense of, vSphere, really VMware users were largely on vSphere Enterprise Plus. And it was in this price band that was very cost effective. That's why they dominated the market, is they're really good technology at half the price of what some competitors were offering. And, Azure Local has an additional license fee on top of it. And depending on how you're wanting to do it, there's L1, L2, L3. And so people are looking sometimes not for that whole cloud platform. They just want that hypervisor, right? It kind of like you either build off a hypervisor to make a cloud platform with different tooling, or you just buy a vendor's total cloud platform. It's kind of the methodology. And yeah, we've seen a lot of customers choose Hyper-V. One, some familiarity. They already know Windows ecosystem. They already have the licensing. And it is nice that we already have a maturity there, going back to the 2012 days. Yeah, Everpure has already had tons of documentation done by Quimby and some of these other individuals here at Everpure to make it easy to engage and deploy these services on best practices. So
I used to have to do go-to-market on those documents.
Yeah.
And all the way back to 2018 when Mr. Quimby would...
And that work is still being leveraged today.
Quimby and Mr. Barker would throw things at me and go, okay, where are you putting these on the web? Get them up here. But it's still there today. Yeah. Super fun. Okay. We're going to keep us moving, though, and go into one that continues to get pretty exciting, right? Is that Nutanix space.
Yeah.
And we did cover it on this program a couple different times and actually had a lot of really good traction, a lot of people watching, a lot of people listening, which was fun. And that kind of always happens when Cody comes on and does things. And we had their VP of product as well. And it was great to see that interest. But this is a partnership that continues to kind of flourish, and shared cultural values and shared focus on the customer, but also probably most importantly, like shared focus on what we can build and integrate together, and that technological passion. The Nutanix space really looks interesting.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky in the standpoint of once VMware discontinued vVols, I was looking for stuff to do, right? Given how much of my day was spent, focusing on that, I was able to spend a lot more time on other things. And one of those aspects was, well, let's look at the other alternatives. And we happened to be starting this partnership with Nutanix at the time. And so I started getting a little bit more involved as I could. And then as we were getting closer to early access phase, I started getting a lot more involved with that and kind of seeing how things were being done. And it was very much from the day one, we're not just doing the same thing that's been done from a legacy standpoint. Let's really build this and integrate it and make this a Nutanix and Everpure joint solution. This isn't just, we can integrate with you however that is, or we'll just do this simple thing. Here's a big, volume.
Yeah, we certified it and we wrote a paper. There you go. Right? It was it's way more than that.
It was how do we integrate, Everpure at an API level with Nutanix? How do we get it so Nutanix, all these things that we learned from vSphere virtual volumes and being API driven and having vCenter connecting directly to the array to do these different parts to it, let's build that, a similar aspect or like operating model directly into Prism Central or from Prism Element. When you configure the external storage, that's not you just giving it, a volume and an endpoint and making sure your SAN's all set up. It's here's the endpoint. like Nutanix is going to configure everything for you. It's going to create the objects on the array. It's going to create the volumes. It's going to do all your multipath and configuration and networking. Doing the multipath and SAN connectivity. And then we went with that application granular, view too, where each, virtual disk within Nutanix has its own volume on the array, and being able to get that granular insight and granular services too was a big part to it, and really was about co-engineering at a core API level between the two. So when we do get new features on Everpure and the flash array, we can work with them, be like, hey, we got this new feature. It's really exciting. Let's look on how to integrate it. Once we finally support, Linux and Unix-based things with Active Cluster File for NVMe, with Active Cluster and NVMe over Fabrics, let's work with our other partners to get that integrated. And so it was a really unique thing that we were able to take a lot of our learnings from other platforms and integrations and really bring that with Nutanix and build it, fresh from the ground up.
And like some of those is like what we've done with the Cinder driver and OpenStack, and what we've done with CSI. Like, we've done these vVol-esque tightly integrated cloud platform into the storage system. And you can only do that when you have the technology like Everpure, like a modern storage system, API-driven. Things like, in this new 7.6 release where we get rid of that CBT volume, that metadata volume, they're calling a snapdiff API, I believe is the exact API they're calling. That's the benefit of a modern system. Now we're completely offloading that to the array, but still allow their cloud platform to use change block tracking to work with these backup vendors, right? So only that can happen on a platform like FlashArray and Everpure, having that modern API approach and the tight integration with the vendor to make sure that it works appropriately.
How excited are you get to talk about this when you found out this was something you get to go out and work with customers on? I mean, new shiny toys to get to go talk about it. That's got to be great.
I was at Dell at the time when they started the XC partnership, and what Nutanix was doing was really exciting. And especially, they stuck around for this exact moment, and there was a Q1 release they had where they added over 1,000 customers. So, they're obviously, taking advantage of this, and now with this external storage solution, I'm personally seeing in the field a lot more customers interested in this solution, and we've got big customers moving over to it.
I think in particular what's been selling on them isn't necessarily what's out there right now, but what they know is coming in the future, or that they have confidence in both Nutanix and Everpure of being able to provide this solution. And it's not just a one-off thing. It's a continual partnership between us.
That was what Cody and Kaiton got across when I had them come in here, right? Was just, look, we're releasing some initial things here, and it's great, and it's functional, and, the strategy is to kind of replicate the look and the feel and how people are comfortable operating in other environments. But this is just the beginning, right? This is just the slow beginning, making sure we do it right. Making sure it works well and has the same characteristics and hallmarks of solutions that we deliver, but that there is more really good things to come.
And this goes back to your earlier comment of if we're having this reset, we would want to do it right.
Right.
And, they have Nutanix has this advantage of, and we do, of building it for this modern age. If you're a guy that goes into Prism Central every day, just because I choose a different storage solution like Everpure instead of HCI, I want to be in the Prism interface still. Nothing changes for them. Their operations with it is still, I create VMs in there. I do my recovery points in there. The UI essentially stays the same. And again, we're so trained into the 25 years of VMFS volumes and piling these VMs on top of VMFS volumes and all the tribal knowledge that comes with that of you don't let them grow beyond X size because of performance limitations or metadata updates. So again, there are gaps in some of these platforms from vCenter to their hypervisor management, but there's also advantages in some ways that people lack, don't always talk about of being built on for a modern age.
Yeah, you're not stuck with some legacy things that are really difficult to undo once they are engineered and built in.
Right.
Hence some of those kind of workaround things or those tribal knowledge best practices because you just learn over time.
Exactly.
And I'm sure engineering would always love to go back and rebuild those things, but you can't. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yep.
And, you just got to make do with what you got, but keep
And-
innovating. So it's a good reset.
And it was really nice to be able to take advantage of new stuff that's come out in Purity in the last,
For sure.
2
That's
years,
another part
right?
too, right? Yeah.
Is we were able to take advantage of realms and secure multi-tenancy in an interesting way that we never been able to do with other platforms. It's always like a tack on or add-on thing at the end, whereas it was really designed from the beginning with this in mind. And the same, we're doing similar stuff with our Fusion, APIs and integration on how we can then expand that to them. And then also working with them on different integration points. Some of the value add that we were able to get for customers, like the vSphere plugin, is like, well, talking to Nutanix, how can we do that? How can we do the Prism plugin? And then working with their different teams on doing that. And,
Yeah, that's one thing we don't talk about enough. I mean, customers in the field may have, their service account that runs the Nutanix ecosystem on one realm, and then they've got their vSphere storage plugin on another realm, and they make sure that they don't cross paths. All this work we've been doing for so long, it's really coming to fruition during this age, right? Like, I'm so happy the work has been done. People have been doing all that work before I even got here. It goes a long way.
You just get to go show all the cool stuff
yeah.
now.
Look at this stuff I had nothing to do with, but you can use
I'm
it.
going to sit down and show you how cool this demo is and how this works. That's always
Can't take
super
any
fun.
credit for it. Zero.
We all can. We're all in this together. I'm going to hit the last one, and maybe we won't go to as much depth because I feel like this could be its own episode.
Oh, man.
Right, in many ways. But Red Hat, OpenShift, KubeVirt, VMs into containers, right? I've hit it on some other episodes. And
This is one of my favorite topics, too.
Well,
Yeah.
don't worry. In a week, everything's going to be updated and changed anyways
Of
in
course.
the KubeVirt front.
Of course it will.
Especially on this front with
Yeah.
OpenShift. I mean, I remember looking at OpenShift virtualization when I first joined and go, as a VMware guy, no one's going to touch this thing.
It was a hard no. Like,
yeah.
you
Hard
take
no.
one look at it, and there's no way that I'd be able to do that. Red Hat listened. Like, this was all feedback that Matt and I were reaching out to them and other like customers and prospects. They started being like, this is not a platform to migrate to from VMware unless I'm already a DevOps guy or I'm already a Kubernetes guy or I've already been running OpenShift.
Too much to learn. Okay.
And then fast forward, I think I went to their sales kickoff in January.
Yeah.
And, was in the roadmap session, they were showing the new vCenter-like trees with the namespaces and the RBAC controls you could have on a namespace. I'm like, this looks like a vCenter world that I remember. It is unbelievable how much they've been iterating on this. And this is what's exciting about all these partnerships, too, is like they care about this market in a day of, there's a lot of other things out there like AI and everything that kind of, consume all this space. But these especially Red Hat is really innovating at such a breakneck speed. You just got to stay on top of it.
Well, they're partnering really closely with us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are showing up on main stage at our Accelerate. They are showing up on main stage at several of the roadshow events that are coming, and we're bringing customers up with them and talking about
And they're doing
that
their-
collaboration.
Yeah, the Red Hat Connect, which I think you'll be at potentially one in Texas. I'm going to
Dallas.
one in New York. It really is breakneck speed. And this is, the reset. They're able to do some things differently, kind of like the Nutanix.
right.
Like, I love their template library, like how you make templates, like versus how vCenter has done it in the past. But they also had the benefit, again, they're making it in a modern day and age with everyone's doing cloud init. Deployment models are different than they were 10, 15 years ago. And we've got strong solutions here, both fronts. We have a software-defined storage solution in Portworx, but we also have FlashArray, and they can work side by side to fit different needs. One of the things that I think gets missed a lot is OpenShift at the edge. Like, we have a software-defined storage product. If a FlashArray doesn't fit the environmentals of a remote office site, and you can only do tower-based systems, or you don't have two-way vault power, you could use Portworx to run your VMs at the edge at a relatively low cost.
Yeah.
So this is a really exciting space to pay attention to in the virtualization market. And we've had, what is it? We've had like 17 releases on the PXCSI with like over 15 major feature updates. We're matching their breakneck innovation with the PXCSI. Like it's been pretty massive.
Yeah, it's something where I remember back in the days with what was it, the PSO,
I remember PSO. Yes.
the
Yes.
pure service orchestrator
Yep.
or something
That
like
was
that,
it.
right?
That was it.
Or pure storage
No, it was
orchestrator.
pure service
Okay.
orchestrator. It definitely was.
And that was primarily FlashBlade too. It wasn't as much on FlashArray, but it was really a big FlashBlade thing because that's how you got read-write many like persistent volumes, and it took off. And then we acquired Portworx, and that was really fun. Portworx was doing a lot of really, really cool stuff in the Kubernetes stage, especially when CSI spec was not ready.
Not great.
No,
Yeah.
and just along with that, the CSI spec has changed rapidly in the last 18 months, and a lot of the stuff that's coming on. And not only that is the amount of people working on the project together or sponsoring specific aspects to it, right? When you only had Kasten basically trying to sponsor the change block tracking updates in the CSI, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, like these storage vendors want to do it too, or these other groups want it, and there's a lot more like promoters, or not necessarily sponsors, but like a better term, they essentially be sponsors of different projects within the CSI. And then also just the object storage interface. I think it's Cozy, being able to work on that and getting that on the roadmap and planning, because that matters too. It's been very interesting working on the Openshift side of things. We do have a PM over our Portworx CSI. That's Naveen. Should get him on sometime. We got to get him flying over from Bangalore over here.
We can do that. We can do that. I have somebody coming over from Chad's team in 2 weeks. It's coming over from India.
We should get that sometime, because he would definitely be able to give a lot more insights onto some of the roadmap and really interesting aspects to it. But a lot of customer demand, like that's been the biggest aspect. As that is something we track, right? We try to track what the adoption looks like with these things, obviously, or what the signal is doing. Like, how does it look like it? How many OpenStack deployments are out there, and how many Cinder, Cinder driver created volumes there are? How many are created through Pure or the Portworx CSI? How many Cloud Drive deployments are out there on FlashArray? And we're really getting an idea of what the adoption is. And it was really telling in the last 2 years, the adoption of Portworx, both from the Cloud Drive and from the direct access volumes with the Portworx CSI, has exploded. Like, it is a very, very fast growing adoption right now, and a lot of customer interest in it too.
Yeah. Super exciting. Great dynamic space.
Yeah.
For us. Loved your enthusiasm around it too, just jumping right. And thanks for taking us back to, like, just to where it was like, not quite ready for prime time. And then they listened, they heard the feedback, they started to put in the features and things people wanted. The timing was good too.
It's wild. Yeah, my tenure's been all like, I never even saw the PSO, so it's been all the CSI.
Yeah.
So like, this is I was at a hardware manufacturer for a while. I mentioned some of the storage products I worked on. Then I worked at VMware, which obviously breakneck speed of software innovation and releases. And then I got here and I thought I'd go back to the old manufacturer model. And I was like, this might be faster than even VMware as a software.
This is a fast place.
It's very fast.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other part too is with Red Hat and with our partnership with them, we were able to quickly look at different problem spaces for for customers that were even wanting to migrate them and trying to really unlock it. And so we worked with Red Hat on a forklift project, and that's to accelerate the migration processes. And we have pretty good insights on how to do that and accelerate it on the storage side of things. And we also understand some of the benefits that you can do on the VMware side to do these accelerated migrations. So we worked really closely with them to get the storage offload implemented. And so there's a couple different flavors of it. There's the migrating from a VMFS data store, and I want to migrate over into OpenShift with Portworx CSI and doing direct access volumes. Well, we can directly offload that to the array. It's not a standard copy. It's not a copy over the network. It can leverage those X copies directly to the array. And a migration, recently doing testing on this one, a migration of 40 terabytes worth of VMs, taking, close to a day or 2 days to kind of do all of that one would take. With the X copy offload, it was about 20 minutes to do all of that. But
Huge.
Then we take it even further. What happens if those VMs are on vVols in VMware? How can we even do that? Because now we have the object, like the vDisk granular storage. we have Vault Copy. There's Vault Copy APIs. And so that 40 terabytes now, the data transfer is less than a second.
Yeah.
So you're transferring these instantaneously. It's also what we worked with Nutanix on Nutanix Move, and that just recently was GA and released too, is the zero copy move is what they called it. And we'll work with other platforms too, because it's about enabling the array to take advantage of and offloading what you can to the storage array.
Well, let's hit the other platforms as sort of a close for us, because you do a wonderful job navigating through. And I know there's a good portion of this audience that loves the technical detail that you provided, right? The versions, the features, what it does. Like that. Yeah. Love that. So I don't get as much of that in here as I should. So hopefully folks appreciate that. But we've got other hypervisors. I know we were talking before hitting record, just really, I think, not digging into those specifically. We featured one of our customers that's gotten really deeply involved with Proxmox, for example, at Accelerate. And Eric is great, and we love hearing about what he's doing. But it's really just more about helping people understand if there's something we haven't talked about here, what's our strategy? Like, what would we tell them relative to kind of other hypervisors?
So, and to be clear, this has been a strategy from
us
from
the
start.
This
isn't a new one.
This is the same thing as all along.
Literally, it's from Kaz down. Yeah. Like his whole approach has been, if you can connect to us, you can use us. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you're doing, and we're going to support you, right?
Yeah.
And we actually made a change to our compatibility and interop, KB, about a year ago, 2 years ago, probably almost now, where we kind of outlined it in much more official language. If you can connect to us for external storage, whether that's for block or for file, we're going to support you. Now, what supported is it is going to be more array focused, right? It is going to be very like, hey, let's make sure everything's operating correctly at the array level. The FlashBlade and Flash Array, they're working correctly. Everything's good with it. Or is there something wrong? Or is there something that we need to fix on our end? Or is it something between these two that we need to fix? And so we'll go ahead and do that. And so it's, it may say best effort, but like we're going to support it. We're not going to tell you to go take a hike. We're not supporting
more than best effort into a lot of these. All the stories I've heard over the years about support, where we're digging into the next layer up of the stack and calling up that company. I mean, we do a great job of supporting.
And we
things.
And we have been expanding our alliance partnerships too.
Yeah.
We do have a technology alliance, program where we do have alliance partners, and some of these other vendors, I can't quite say yet which ones, have been reaching out to us to be alliance partners with us, and so that they will be getting out. And once they, finally dot the I's, cross the T's, legal signs off on it, right? We'll have like a, blog post and some kind of joint release and stuff.
That's fine. I had an old boss who always used to say, curmudgeonly guy, said, better to have choice than to have gaps.
Yep.
Right. And so having all this choice is great for our customers. Whether there's a really deep, long-standing relationship or just what Kaz said, which is, look, if you can connect, it'll work, right? Yeah. And we'll take care of those funky storage things that you may be experiencing with something else that you're using, and we'll fix that, and then we can work on helping you be successful with whatever you choose.
And we did even expanded, like, what does it necessarily mean even on a supported level, right? Because some vendors have a certification program, whether that's Red Hat or VMware or Microsoft. They have a very specific certification that if you want to be on their interop matrix and show up for that. And so we do have that kind of classified as like, are we certified with these other vendors? Then yeah. But we also wanted to make sure, it was like, well, is this something that we're always testing and validating? Like, is this a validated solution? And so we have that on there where it is a continual testing. Or do we just test it and make sure that it worked? And just giving you that? Or is it, our default approach is if you can connect to us, you can use us. And so we do have that kind of outlined in our interop matrix now too. So
which is super cool.
To your point, like, it's all the external factors you have to consider. The what is the vendor's HCL process and certification process. Like you mentioned, and what I've experienced in the first year is that big orange hug. We're going to absolutely go above and beyond to support you in whatever journey you're going down. But there's external factors beyond us that maybe it's a bug in that hypervisor's code. You have to, at some point, once we've shot where we need to go, you need to reach out to them to get that bug fixed. But we're also looking for people that watch this podcast or engage with us on the community, I know you'll touch on how to do that there.
Yep.
Of like other ones, like we've talked about, do we do any content around Overt or maybe some of these other platforms we haven't quite done, because Overt's actually maybe kind of on the downward because it was RHV and RHV's been deprecated. So we're always interested in hearing what other people are looking at. That's largely where we put our time and investment, is that feedback from the community. So definitely let us know.
And it's a fantastic plug and a good place for us to close. So, thank you both for coming on, and thank you for reaching out and just saying, hey, we want to do this.
Yeah.
Because that's how I get my best guests usually. when they're
first time caller.
Thank you. When they're motivated. But really, as a CTA for folks, if you're a customer out there or even a partner and you're playing in this space, purecommunity.purestorage.com, that's where we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we want you to go and give us your feedback or reach out, ask a question. We're all hanging out there and we want to hear what's going on. We've got some great discussions that have been going on the forums in there. So great place to push people. And then of course, everybody knows where to find you. Your field solution architect team is so busy and active out there, which I love. And we're going to see you guys both at VMware Explore, right?
Yep,
that's right.
That's awesome. Who else from the team's going? Usual suspects?
The usual, I guess Stamon's out there.
David Stevens will be there too.
Stamen, DS.
Cody will obviously be
Are they
there.
letting-
Cody missed last year, but he'll be out
Are
there
they letting the
this year.
Langer escape out for that one?
Not this time.
I think
No?
he's out. He's on PTO.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think.
He is. He's out right now. That's
Yeah.
right.
I'm just excited they did it a week later than normal, because the last 2 years I've missed my my youngest birthday because it was right during VMware Explorer each time. Thankfully, there were just 4 and 5 the last 2 years, so they don't remember too much. But now
Usually
that they're turning
coincides.
6, they literally asked me a little bit ago, are you going to be here for my birthday?
Yeah, they remember everything after 4. That's usually kind of that
and I'm
cutoff
like,
line.
oh, no, I'll be here. We'll make sure, because thankfully VMware Explorer is a week later than normal.
That's awesome. Well, have a great time at the show. Talk to everybody. Point them to the podcast if they want to hear more and learn about what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
I just appreciate you both so much coming on, and also just for developing that really cool deck that we did accelerate in. If people go to everpuredata.com/resources, there's a video replay of that if you want to get even more into depth and even hear some of the feedback and questions from that session. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Alex. Thanks, Matt, for coming on the program. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Pure Report podcast. Tell a friend, tell a colleague, and we keep the great guests like Alex and Matt coming on to the program. With that, we will wrap for Everpure, for Alex, for Matt. This is Rob Ludeman saying, don't look back. Something might be gaining on you.